On this episode of ITG, we're talking about practice as spring ball rolls along. And also, I went out to Arizona, I saw a baseball victory, and I got to chat with Pat McAfee. We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of In the Gun.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight.
I didn't get hired for nostalgia reasons, you know what I mean? I got hired to win.
Mountaineer Nation.
You are In the Gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 333 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wes Euler. As always, the best teammates in the business. You've got myself and the signal caller, Jed Drenning, on this episode of ITG. And of course, we've got our village that makes this all possible. A big thank you to everybody at Team Toothman. Of course, JR doing yeoman's work in the WVU NIL department. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. A big thank you to our friend Rick Lewis and Fortis for, oh man, it's been a couple weeks since I've done this now. I got to refresh myself on all the reads here for roof performance and financial certainty. Yeah. That's exactly right. I was, across the country in a different time zone for a few days, but for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed, you got to visit fortis.us.com. And of course, friends of the show, friends in real life, the good people at Johnston Equipment. Make sure you're checking them out between Weston and Buchanan on Route 33. You can also visit them online, Johnston with a T, JohnstonEQ.com. And yes, Jed, I was out in Arizona for work for a few days. I did get to see a WVU baseball win on the road. Caught up with our buddy Andrew Caridi in the process, and got to chat with Pat McAfee for about 2 minutes at the NFL owners meetings. We will get into all of that. Jed was able to take in some spring practice, so we'll talk a little spring ball here like we have been doing as that rolls along and gets, about 10 days or so here until the conclusion with the spring festival. We have got plenty to get to, but we begin, Jed, with a crown. That's right. Big shout out around campus here quickly to the men's basketball team, as they took down Oklahoma Sunday in overtime, 89-82, in a crazy, wild, back-and-forth game to win just the second ever edition of the college basketball crown. Another one of these new, you all know Mountaineer Nation. You were following along. We're diehards. We watch the Mountaineers whenever and wherever they may be. But it's a condensed tournament, one of these postseason tournaments in Las Vegas. Winning team gets $300K of NIL money. The Mountaineers take down Stanford in overtime in the first game. They beat Creighton pretty comfortably in the semifinal. And then a crazy back-and-forth one against Oklahoma, Jed. Mountaineers get out to a big early lead. Oklahoma takes a lead. It looks like Oklahoma's going to win. WVU comes back, looks like we're going to win. Oklahoma comes back, forces overtime. And then at the start of overtime, it looks like the Sooners are starting to run away with it. And here comes Honor Huff drilling his 57th three-pointer of the game. And the Mountaineers end up wearing the crown out in Vegas. Pretty cool. Listen, this is not nearly to the effect of winning a national championship, right, Jed? But anytime you can win your last game of the year and win a postseason tournament, pick up some great memories for those guys, a little NIL cash, some of the notoriety and cachet that comes with these postseason things. Job well done by Ross Hodge, by Honor Huff, by everybody involved with the basketball program. To, as we talked about, want to see this thing through, not only want to play in this tournament, but to knock off three pretty good programs en route to winning just the second ever college basketball crown.
It's great to be able to cut a net down, but it's especially great when you can cut a net down under any and all circumstances in the month of April. First of all, let's give a shout out to Mr. Eaglestaff. A lot of people think he's not getting enough love because Honor Huff, who we're going to talk about, stole the show. But you talk about taking the old phrase, saving your best for last, to a new level. You know what it kind of had vibes of? It kind of had vibes of Pat White's 300-yard passing effort against North Carolina in Charlotte to win the bowl game. It kind of had that kind of cherry on top last game of your time at West Virginia. When you look what Honor Huff was able to do with that performance for the ages, I shared this in the group thread, and I just think this is awesome. It made me go back and look up the other games. Per @Stathead, and this was tweeted by Corey Balanzi, @C Balanzi. on Twitter. Must be nice to have a Twitter account that's not hacked by a friendly Nigerian. He says only 6 guys in Division One men's basketball have played 5+ career games in April. Of those 6, only 1 went perfect. So let's count them down 6-1. Brian Davis of Duke was 3-2 in his 5 games. Antonio Lang of Duke, 3-2 in his 5 games. Christian Leitner of Duke, 3-2 in his 5 games. Grant Hill of Duke, stop me when you see a pattern emerging here, 4-1 in his 5 games. Alex Caravan, UConn, 5-1 in his 6 games. Honor, come on, 5-0. So now I had to go back and look. He's 3-0 at West Virginia, obviously in the tournament. So when you go back and look at UT Chattanooga,
yeah, they won the
2
NIT
games
last year.
That's right. 2 of those games from the NIT fell in April. You had the semifinal game against Loyola Chicago, 80-73, and then you had the championship game against UC Irvine, 85-84, and let me see, 14 points he had in that championship game. So 5-0 in 5 games in April. Only guy with a perfect record to play that many games in April. That's kind of cool. No matter how you stack the numbers or twist the numbers to come up with that, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a neat little nugget. So hats off there. That's a really cool little achievement.
I think there's something to be said for kind of, your final collegiate game, as you mentioned, just emptying the clip, like going out with one of your best Pat White throwing for 300 yards, Honor Huff just lighting up the score sheet. There's something that's pretty cool about that. There's something romantic about that.
Getting leads, blowing leads, overcoming deficits. That's our season, right?
Yep,
We're always doing one or the other, either blowing a big lead or overcoming a big deficit. Well, you got it all in the final game. That was basically this team in microcosm. Hats off to the West Virginia men's basketball program and the women's basketball program. It's been a heck of a year for hooping in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Yeah, and some hardware, too, with a Big 12 tournament trophy for the ladies and, of course, the crown for the men. Pretty. Listen, that ain't too shabby, all right? That ain't too. You win 3 basketball games, you get $300K from it. That's a nice day's work for 4 days out there in Sin City for the fellas. Jed, as we alluded to a little bit, but let's do a story time here for a few minutes because I missed the podcast last week. You and Skylar did a great job as always. But the reason that I wasn't on the show last week is because I was out in Arizona. I think our regular listeners know this, but if for some reason you've just joined us in the last few weeks or last few months or we're hopping on the moving train that is ITG here, welcome to the party, by the way. For my day job, I host a radio show for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last week in Arizona was the NFL annual league meetings, the owners' meetings, right? Where all the owners and head coaches get together and they hash out rule changes and bylaws and league stuff. And it alternates. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, and then it's in Orlando, Florida, and it's in Phoenix, Arizona, and Orlando, Florida. Though it alternates every single year. This was I just finished my 8th year with the Steelers, and I worked for the Philadelphia Eagles for 3 years before that. So this was, just finishing up my 11th year in NFL football, and this was the first time I've actually ever gone to an owners meeting, which was pretty cool, and the weather was amazing in Arizona in March, as you can imagine, and it's an incredible event. There's amazing food everywhere. This New Era hoodie, you get to go into this room, Jed, and there's like Nike and New Era and Fanatics and TaylorMade. And you like walk through and they're like, what's your shoe size? 10. And they hand you a pair of $200 running shoes. What's your shirt size? Large. And they hand you a Nike duffel bag that by itself is probably $150 and has 12 different Nike hoodies and quarter zips and shirts and shorts. And I mean, probably $1,200, $1,500 worth TaylorMade golf balls and all these different things. So it was really cool. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun getting to do that for the first time. I was out there. I hosted a 3-hour show every day, kind of like from the little mini radio row there at the NFL owners meetings at the fabulous Biltmore in Phoenix, Arizona. So we did shows Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then flew home Wednesday night. So we landed late Saturday. We landed probably 7:30 Arizona time. With the time change and everything. Long day. I'm exhausted. I'm waiting for my bag at baggage claim. I'm like scrolling through my Twitter account, and I get the update that the Mountaineers had beaten Arizona State, or were beating Arizona State there on Saturday night. And it kind of like hit me, and I see Phoenix Municipal Stadium on there and the graphic and everything, that the WVU social media account posted. And I'm like, oh yeah, Mountaineers are in Phoenix this weekend. Oh yeah, we have the rubber match of the series tomorrow on Sunday. So I see that it's a 5:00 game local time. I was on air from noon to 3 Arizona time. So I'm like, the wheels in my mind are starting to spin. I'm like, I'm done at 3:00 on this Sunday. We had later shows the rest of the week, but Sunday was just noon to 3. I was like, I'm done a little bit earlier here today. I was like, let me just see how far away this Phoenix Municipal Stadium from our hotel and all that is. 5 miles away. It was a 12-minute Uber. So I'm like, I'm going to the game tomorrow. Like, what else am I going to do on a Sunday night? I'm going to the baseball game, 2 ranked teams, rubber match. So I end up going to the game. I Uber. I go all by myself. I couldn't find anybody. They're like, we're not going to a college baseball game. You're out of your mind. So I go by myself. I'm like, this will be great. I'll get a ticket anywhere. I'll get the cheapest ticket possible. I'll end up sitting behind the WVU dugout. I'll check out the stadium. Maybe I'll leave early. Like, we'll just see how it all goes. It was like a $17 ticket or $19 ticket. I'm like, this will be fun. However long I stay, I'll stay. And let's just go check out Phoenix Municipal Stadium and Arizona State and 2 really good baseball programs here. I get out there. The park's amazing. I mean, it holds like 9,000 people. It was the old Oakland A's spring training facility, and they converted it for Arizona State. And there's Barry Bonds and Reggie Jackson and Dustin Pedroia. And I mean, they've won 5 national championships and been to like 20 College World Series. Really cool. So I'm walking around like most of the first inning, just kind of taking it all in. End of the first inning, there was actually a good amount of Mountaineers there because we played 3 games in Tempe against Arizona State, and then we went to Tucson and played Arizona. And so I think a lot of parents and a lot of boosters and a lot of fans were just like, let's make a trip out of this. It's March in Arizona. It's 77 degrees and sunny every day. It's beautiful. And so there were a few hundred WVU fans there behind the dugout. It was probably 15 rows up, kind of the lower bowl, if you will. And I'd say probably 10 or 11 of those 15 rows were filled with Mountaineers. I was like, this is great. I'm going to grab a beer. I'm going to sit down in the back. I'll sit behind the WVU fans. Maybe I'll make some friends, all that good stuff. I'm sitting there for no less than 60 seconds. And there's like, much like Mountaineer Field, Jed, you know how there's boxes at the top of the lower level? It's not it's not an enclosed suite or anything like that, but it's those boxes, that comfier chairs, a little more space, food and beverage service, that kind of thing. So I'm sitting with my back against the box at kind of the top of the section. And I'm sitting there for maybe 60 seconds, and I hear, excuse me, buddy. And I kind of like do one of these, if you're watching on YouTube, you see me looking over my shoulder. And it's 2 Arizona State, 2 guys, Arizona State hats and t-shirts, probably in their 50s, late 50s, early 60s, if I had to guess. They go, hey, buddy. And I kind of look over my shoulder, and the one guy goes, don't take this the wrong way, but you look like a guy who might have Zyn. And for those who don't know, Zyn are the tobacco-free pouches that are all the rage right now. I'm not a big tobacco guy. I'm not a big nicotine guy. But when in Rome, I do sometimes like to get myself a thing of Zyns. I maybe buy like 2 or 3 tins of Zyn the whole year, and it's always like a special kind of treat myself. I'm like, I'm going to be out at the owners' meetings. I'm going to be having a few beers in the evening. I'm going to buy a thing of Zyns for the week to, have some fun and just, when in Rome and having a good time type thing. So I had literally the day before just bought a new tin of Zyn that I hadn't even opened yet. So the guy goes, hey, buddy, don't take this the wrong way, but you look like the type of guy that might have Zyn. Do you have any Zyn? And I go, what? Is it the tall boy beer and the West Virginia apparel that's giving me away here? And he goes, yes, absolutely.
Told you as a Zyn user.
He pegged me as a Zyn user. I think it was the West Virginia and the tall boy beer and all that. And I go, funny enough.
That's an impressive profile skill right there.
Impressive. Very impressive.
That is. That's right up there with John Douglas from the Investigative Support Unit in Quantico. I was like, holy cow. That's
So
impressive. Yeah.
so I go, funny enough, I do. I said, I have a fresh 10 in my pocket that I haven't even opened. Funny you should ask. And he goes, both of us forgot ours and we're kind of jonesing for one. He goes, if you don't mind, if you share with us, you can come sit in the box with us, hang out. We'll buy you a couple beers and you can sit up here in these comfy chairs. And I was like, let's do it. Jason and Nick were their names. If for some reason they end up watching this, big shout out to Jason and Nick. They were kind as could be. They were two retired friends who live in the area, and they're Arizona State alums. They just go to Arizona State games. They go to Diamondback games. They go to spring training games out there. They just love it. They're just two retired guys. They're like, our wives hate us. All we do is go to baseball games and drink beers. And so I ended up staying the whole game with those guys. We had a great time. WVU won 9-5. I got to see a grand slam. Got to see us hit a grand slam. Got to see us steal home. And got to talk to these two knew everything about college baseball. I mentioned JJ Weatherholt, and they were like, JJ Weatherholt, that guy's amazing. I was like, yeah, he went to the same high school as me, all that. Like they knew their stuff. And then I got to talking to them about the Arizona State football prospects that are coming up in the draft, like Jordan Tyson and Maxian Achor and all these guys, and getting their opinion on some of these Arizona State football players. Had a great time with Jason and Nick for about 3 hours, just BSing, talking baseball, talking football, talking life. And I had a fabulous time. Amazing park. Great fans. We end up winning. Walking out of there, I saw Andrew Caridi up in the booth, and I was like, I'm going to surprise him. And I ended up getting to talk. Ended up getting to talk to him for a few minutes before he had to hop on the bus down to Tucson, and I took an Uber back home. But Jed, it was one of those like just last minute decisions. Let's go to the baseball game, and man, I'm so glad I did. Great win, great park, great fans at Arizona State. It was a very enjoyable experience.
Some of the great moments in life, as we know, are improvised. They're not scheduled. They're not part of an itinerary. You just wing it and you do it. And I couldn't help but think as you're saying that, Wes, what does it say about West Virginia baseball and where it currently is when you say, I saw a grand slam, I saw him steal home, and I'm thinking, the grand slam, that's already happened this year. The stealing home, that's kind of what we're known for. Holy cow, but good for you. That's really cool. Yeah, that's something you're going to be telling a similar story or different versions of that. Before it's over, it'll be 2 grand slams and 15-5.
That's
Here
exactly
in 10
right.
years. But still, that's a heck of a treat. Good on you. I was excited when you started texting pictures. I was so glad you had the opportunity to do that. I'm kind of like that when I'm on the road. If I'm within striking distance of anything, instead of just sitting down in the hotel bar, I'd rather go take something in.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if it involves the flying WV, why not? I mean, how many opportunities do you have to do something like that? Watch West Virginia play baseball in Arizona, for crying out loud. So good for you. That's really cool.
It was awesome. Like I said, amazing park, really cool fans. The weather was, 75 degrees and sunny. Though you could see the mountains and the desert off in the background. It was a really cool experience. And I was very fortunate to get to do that. And thanks to all the good people there at ASU that made it so much fun. I would definitely, if you're a WVU baseball fan who's been, thinking about taking road trips, I would strongly recommend next time we're out there in Tempe, if you can swing it, because their park's 5 miles from the Phoenix airport in downtown Phoenix. It's an easy 12, 15-minute Uber ride.
Where is the park, Wes? What part of town is it?
I didn't realize Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tempe are all like right on top of each other. They're all just a couple miles away. Like I'm conditioned from, being from Pennsylvania, Jed, that like Pittsburgh and Harrisburg and Erie and Philadelphia, everything's 2 or 3 hours away in Pennsylvania at least, right? But here you could get Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe all within 15 minutes of each other. Like they're all within a couple miles.
Any bowl game in Phoenix, you're going to be having dinner at least a couple nights in Scottsdale and a couple nights in Tempe. That's just how it works.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So it was really cool. The stadium, like I said, was the old A's facility. I don't want to say old in the sense of it's old, but it was used by the Oakland A's for spring training for a while, and then they built a new one, and Arizona State bought that one from them and kind of converted it. But it was It's so easy. I mean, you can get Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe, take the whole thing in. And like I said, I mean, March in Arizona, that might be the best weather in the country. High 70s and sunny, no humidity. That like dry heat thing that they talk about is so real. Like it was so comfortable just walking around and doing stuff weather-wise. So it was fantastic. 10 out of 10 would
See,
recommend.
you got to see the Mountaineers play in an old Cactus League stadium. That might be the
Exactly right.
coolest part of that story. That's
And what's
that's really neat. Yeah.
what's great too, Jed, is up above the outfield they have a parking lot. So I mean, it's obviously distance a little back because home runs and things like that. But you know, maybe 20, 30 yards outside of the outfield, and then raised up, there's a parking lot. And in that parking lot, I had to go see it because Jason and Nick told me about it. There's a plaque where Barry Bonds hit like a 500-foot home run when he was in
Really?
college there. And it stood, as like a Pac-12 record or whatever. It might even still be, but there's like a plaque in the outfield. Barry Bonds hit the ball here, in 1981 or whatever it
Oh,
was.
wow.
And like I said, Reggie
Wow.
Jackson, Dustin Pedroia. I mean, the list of guys that they've had that have had great Major League Baseball careers. It's a really good program. Like, I don't want to say it's not the Alabama, of college baseball, but it's a really stinking good program. And yeah, like I said, great park, great weather, great fans, great win for the Mountaineers.
And there's stuff to take in there. It's like, if you're going to check out the campus, ASU has a beautiful campus.
Yep.
Obviously, a
Yep.
lot's been made of that. I like Mountain America Stadium. I think it's a cool stadium. It's a nice facility. It's tucked, behind in front of those mountains. It's just a neat area. It's different. I mean, if you're from this
It
part of
is.
the world, you don't often see landscapes like
It,
that.
it
So it's
looks
very
way
different
different.
for the backdrop of a sporting event.
Yeah, it was awesome. So that was Sunday night, Jed. And then Monday night was the NFL owners dinner. And I'd been told this is one of the coolest things that we get to do every year. It's basically a dinner hosted by 32 billionaires. It is fancy. Picture the fanciest wedding reception you could imagine. That's kind of what it's like. It's in this whole private area, outdoor area. And Jed, I'm not kidding you. You walk in, there's 4 different bars. There's 2 sushi stations. There's 2 steak stations. There's 2 seafood stations. There's 2 pasta stations. There's a dessert and ice cream area. There's a petting zoo for kids. There's a food truck with burgers and fries. There's a live band, and it's all free. It's all on the house. Goes from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock that Monday night of the owners meeting. So we got invited. And it was incredible. I mean, it's imagine 32 billionaires hosting a wedding reception. The food was amazing. The drinks, I had a smoked mezcal margarita that was one of the best cocktails I've ever had in my life. We're drinking different fancy bourbons and all these things, steak and sushi and lobster and pasta. It was unbelievable. And then towards the end of the night, probably 9:15ish, and everybody's there. I mean, NFL coaches, NFL owners, all the personalities you can imagine.
Just like
Schefter's in the corner
Catalina
on his
wine
phone.
mixer, Wes.
It's the
That's what you're
Catalina wine
describing here.
mixer.
Yeah.
And of course, at one of the bars is our guy Pat McAfee holding court with the who's who of the world. All his McAfee show guys are there, except for AJ Hawk. I didn't see AJ Hawk, but Darius Butler was there. Tone Diggs was there. Boston Connor, all those guys. Ty Schmidt. So McAfee and his whole crew, plus like Peter Schreger was hanging out with them. Joe Buck was there hanging out with them. Jed, I got to fist bump Joe Buck, which was pretty cool. And I told him to do more seasons of Brockmire with Hank Azaria, which is a baseball TV comedy show for those who aren't familiar. But so McAfee's kind of holding his court, and there's kind of like a wall of people that are kind of blocking them off from the hoi polloi like us, as you can imagine. They're kind of doing their thing like in the corner of the bar, and they're far from the only famous, recognizable people at this event. And they're all, going to this event, they're like, hey, be cool. No pictures, no social media, like none of that stuff. Like, this is a dinner for everybody to hang out. Don't be a dingus. And so in my mind, I'm like, hey, if there's an easy opportunity to say what's up to Pat real quick, I will. If not, I'm not going to go out of my way and make a jackass out of myself and, like walk over into their sphere. But at one point, I'm standing at the one bar talking to some of my buddies, and McAfee comes up to like grab he was grabbing like 8 waters because, everyone's been drinking for a few hours. It's hot. You're outside. So McAfee's coming up to the bar and he's grabbing like 8 bottles of water to take back to his area. And I'm like, what the hell? And so I just kind of tap him on the shoulder and I'm like, hey, Pat, I'm Wes Euler. I do the In the Gun podcast with Owen Schmidt and Jed Drenning. And he's like, oh, yeah, what's up, brother? How's it going? And we talked for like 2 minutes. It was real quick, but he was like, how's everything? What are you doing out here? Give Owen and Jed all my love. We were talking about the basketball. I said I went to the baseball game last night, so we talked about the Mountaineers for 60 seconds. He said, what's up? He said to give Owen and you all of his love. And then he kind of, took all of his waters and went back to his corner. So it was maybe 2 minutes. But it was fun getting to, just shout at McAfee and tell him hello and, get him, talking about you and Owen for a quick second. And then Jed, the cherry on top of everything was 10 o'clock is when the party closes, right? I told you it's from 6 to 10. And it's one of those things that it's like, you wish it was an hour longer, Well, they're like closing down the party, closing down the bars, and McAfee goes, hold on. If I cover everybody's tab, can we stay another hour? And the bartenders kind of look at each other and they're like, yeah, sure. So from 10 to 11, a bunch of people hang out too. And Jed, it ended up being, I think, well over $100,000 of a bar tab for a bunch of people drinking for an hour at a fancy resort in Phoenix, Arizona. McAfee picked up the bar tab, paid the bartenders big chunk of money for everybody to be able to stay and hang an hour longer and continue the conversation and the fun and the good times. And ain't McAfee paying to extend the party a little bit longer. Ain't that just the most Pat McAfee thing that you've heard in a few minutes?
Thinking, my first thought is, come on, man, that's a slot receiver you could be paying for instead of an extra hour at the bar. Come on, that could be the difference between us and some Big Ten school getting some player. But well, here's the first thing, Wes. You have to condition yourself. Now, anytime you mention Pat McAfee, it's friend of the show, Pat McAfee. That's right. That's right. It's friend of the show,
friend
Pat
of the
McAfee,
program.
Friend of the program. Because for those who don't know, go back to In the Gun, episode 220, when Rich was hired, breaking news that night. You're going to want to go back and watch that. We had a lot of fun with Pat just jumping on out of nowhere. Owen texted him at the last minute. The next thing you know, he's on there sharing memories with Owen, and we're all talking about Rich getting the job. And that was right before he was in Morgantown doing a show. So In the Gun, episode 220, look it up. Subscribe, by the way, if you're not already, and you'll know these things. But thanks if you are already. But friend of the program, Pat McAfee. So how about that? He just throws $100,000 up for a bar tab for an hour. I mean, good for him. Good for him to have that kind of lifestyle.
For 100 people that, probably 90% of them he didn't know. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
But the beauty of it is, if you can, why not? Because, there's some people in that bar that'll be telling that story and talking about how generous he was for the rest of their career. So that's right. Why not? Right. Good for him. Good for him.
And then Jed, to tie this all together from McAfee to the Crown, McAfee actually posted a funny video of him reacting to the final seconds of the broadcast of us beating Oklahoma and winning the college basketball crown. And of course, there's someone sitting courtside wearing a gold Pat White 5 WVU football jersey. Because one of the things that I firmly believe in life is you can go to any WVU sporting event and you will find somebody wearing a Pat White football jersey. Still in the year of our Lord, 2026. I don't care if it's soccer, volleyball, basketball, baseball, wrestling, obviously football. But if you go to a WVU sporting event, you will see somebody wearing a 5 jersey from Pat White's era. And McAfee's taking his video and you see the guy and he goes, oh, there's a Pat White jersey. Retire 5, which of course, Pat does this like once a year where he brings that up and it always kind of sets off a firestorm. But that was just kind of a funny cherry on top of that, that full from the Crown to Arizona to back to McAfee and Pat White and which I think we're all on board with his ongoing campaign to retire 5, of course, the number of his former teammate.
I look at it like this, Wes. If you're going to retire numbers at West Virginia, of course, Pat White needs to be one of them. But I'm not a guy who's sold on the notion of retiring numbers. I mean, I used to think like this anyway. Like my high school, I'm fortunate enough my high school numbers retired. It hangs in the high school. And I'm flattered, and it's a heck of an honor. But if they ever came back and said, Jed, we need that number, okay. It wouldn't
Sure,
bother me one lick.
sure.
Wouldn't change anything about my memories of playing at Tucker County High School. Wouldn't change any of that. I'm flattered. I'm honored. I see it more as representative of the team that I was part of. But I used to think like that before the offense and defense started wearing the same numbers, because I used to think it's not healthy from a jersey number standpoint to not have the flexibility to stretch it out over your entire roster. Now you got, two numbers, one on offense, one on defense. So numbers are more meaningful than they've ever been. I'll tell you what I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of the programs that have like the gallery of traditions or honor or hall of honor, whatever you want to call it, where you can put whatever number up there in representing a player who played 20 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Don't necessarily even have to retire the number. It's kind of like when you look at Mountaineer Field and that short list of names there, you're kind of leaning into something like that. Like I go to some of these Big 12 stadiums, and you see they have, some of them have versions of that with some of their all-time greats up there. And one of the cool things is, Wes, I often find myself saying like, wow, I didn't know such and such played here.
Right.
I didn't know Lynn Dickey played at Kansas State.
I
Right?
didn't know. I
You
didn't know
know,
Dustin. I didn't know Dustin Pedroia played at Arizona
yeah,
State
see,
until a couple days
that's
ago.
kind of neat. You don't need to retire their number to honor them. You can still use the number for whatever next great player comes. And if two guys have the same number and they're both great, put them both in the hall and
Right.
honor them
Right.
both. Plus, you can do coaches by putting their name instead of their number. I'm more a fan of doing something like that. Like when you look at some of these organizations that have retired, how many numbers have the Yankees retired?
Oh
I mean, it's some
gosh.
bizarre number.
I don't
And,
think they
and
have a single digit. I don't think they have a single digit number left, Jed. I think they're all retired.
and yes, they have these all-time greats, no doubt about it. I'm not saying don't honor them, but I mean, some people might say it's sacrilegious to see somebody else wear three for the Yankees, the Babe Ruth number three. And I'm like,
It's
I
been a
get it,
long
I get it,
time since Babe Ruth
I
played,
understand.
though. You know.
I understand, or Mickey number seven.
Mhm.
I get all that, but at the same time, I'm more a Hall guy. Honor them that way,
Agree.
more so than a number. And see, you get into this weird thing like, okay, let's say that some places only honor their consensus All Americans and this and that. Well, that's what always frustrates me about Pat White's situation. We've discussed in the offseason before the criteria needed to get into the College Football Hall of Fame. We talked about it last year with Steve. You had to make a majority of the approved All American teams, which means Pat White will never make it because of the quarterback competition that he was up against those years, the Tebows of the world, and those types of things. That doesn't mean we can't honor him how we see fit. And I would like the idea of the greatest players in the history of West Virginia and the greatest coaches, kind of like we're doing now around Touchdown Terrace, but maybe even expand that a little. That's just my thought. Look, I'm not gonna, cast harsh judgment on somebody that wants to retire any number for a compelling reason. But yeah, West Virginia, if you're going to be retiring numbers, of course, he has to be right there toward the top of the conversation. Absolutely. But even, I mean, doesn't Pitt have like 11 retired numbers? Now,
They got a
now
good
granted,
amount.
Pitt has
Yeah.
all these NFL Hall of Famers for sure. To me, that's a Hall of Legends kind of thing, or a Ring of Legends, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to structure it. Do something like that, and then you don't have to get into this whole thing where now you're going to have 105 kids on a roster, and you're looking for, oh, wish we had an extra number 17, but we can't because such and
Sure.
such wore it, and now nobody can offense or defense wear it. Now you got guys on both sides of the ball, so I don't know.
I love your idea of Ring of Honor, Hall of Honor, Museum of Honor, whatever you want to call it, and really just like I'm with you because I think a lot like these guys deserve recognition. But I am also I've always kind of been on the fence of retiring numbers too because where does it stop? And just because you're Babe friggin' Ruth, does that mean that nobody else should ever wear your number? I know how great you were, but is that a reason? Like to me, Jed, Roberto Clemente's number should be retired. No Pittsburgh Pirate should ever wear 21 again because of what Roberto Clemente meant to Latinos in Major League Baseball. He died on a humanitarian trip. He was an all-time great player. Nobody should wear Jackie Robinson's number again. You know what I mean? No one, to bring Arizona State into this, no one should ever wear the number 40 at Arizona State again because of Pat Tillman. You know what I mean? Those when numbers are retired because you were great on the field or the diamond or the ice or whatever, and because you are a hell of a human being at the same time, I'm cool with that. But it's just I've always been back and forth on, is just being great at your sport a reason that no one should ever wear your number again? I can see both sides of the argument for it, but I love your idea. Just do a Ring of Honor, Hall of Honor, Museum of Honor, whatever you want to call it, Owen, and give Pat, and give Reed Williams, and give all those guys, some type of immortality.
Key thing, Wes, here's what I would say. No matter what you decide to do, I don't want something buried inside the facility somewhere. Yeah, it's great for fans to tour it and this and that. I think it's critical that for every fan sitting in the stadium, they can look up and browse those names and those numbers. To me, that is an absolute non-negotiable. No matter how you structure it, make sure that the 60,000 at Mountaineer Field can look up and see all the names. That's the whole point. Because when you come to a Mountaineer football game, there's a certain list of names I think you should see and associate with that stadium, especially if you're a visiting fan and don't know, like we were just talking about. That to me is one of the coolest parts, is going to one of these venues, scanning around the stadium. Like before we go on the air, I'm up in the booth and I'm looking around. Wow, I didn't know such and such went here. I knew he went here, but not him. That's great for the school. And I think that should be part of what we do. But the reality of it's this, Wes. Just like we talked about how many episodes ago, if you have a career record at your school, pretty good chance you're always going to have that career record with people bouncing around school to school to school to school. This is a conversation that over the arc of time, I mean, you can probably say that if you want to start retiring numbers now, you're not going to run out, because all the numbers you would want to retire have probably already played. All right. You're not going to retire somebody's number unless you're at Colorado or Shedeur Sanders, right? For somebody showing up and playing 1 or 2 seasons. I mean, the closest you could get it with the Mountaineers would be like Bruce. I mean, somebody who was there short term. And I would put Bruce right in that Ring of Honor. Of course I would. I think that would be great. But that's just my 2 cents for what it's worth, my humble opinion. If you're going to retire jerseys, absolutely Pat White.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those retired jerseys type guys. I like other ways of doing that, keeping the numbers out there outside of a couple very unique and unusual circumstances. But
I think you and I are in lockstep on that one. But yeah, in some way, Pat, Steve, Owen, Reed Williams, Dan Moses. I mean, so many guys from that era deserve to have. And I understand, hey, Owen's picture is up on one of the pillars in the stadium. So there is something like that. But I wouldn't mind seeing it more in, the kind of just visible from the seats and in the bowl, and being a little more official. But hey, that's maybe a bigger conversation for another day.
You can have the Ring of Honor, Wes, and then if you want to get real selective, have one statue in each of the 4 corners of the stadium outside. Now, who are the 4? See what I'm saying? So you can have the ring where you honor the greatest, but also the super, super most elite of the elite. You're going to have Don Nealon and 3 others. Probably Pat.
I was going to say Don Nealon's definitely one of them, yeah.
That's where the conversation goes. But I like that idea of maybe in each corner outside the stadium, because I want people who aren't familiar with West Virginia to walk into Mountaineer Field. Oh, wow. Look at that. That guy, that's right. That guy played here. And then get inside. Oh, he played here. I forgot he played it. I love that. I think it's great for the program.
Don Nealon, Sam Huff, Chuck Halley, Pat White.
Episode.
That Wes Euler guy almost made it, but he's my first one out. That is a good episode though. Let's do that. Let's do that this off season. 4 statues, Mount Rushmore of WVU football statues that you would put up outside of. Maybe we'll do that at a rainy day at some point here when spring ball's over and we're looking for some content. But speaking of spring ball, Jed was able to take in some spring ball. We'll discuss when we return on the other side. Wes Euler, Jed Drenning, you are in the gun.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations. With more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
You're listening to Mountaineer Football Talk.
ITG. When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready.
Low-rate financing available on select Coyote models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
Back in the gun here as we roll along on this edition of ITG. It's time to talk some more spring ball like we've been doing for the last few weeks. But Jed was, sometimes Jed, when we're on our breaks, he makes me nervous. He's like, I got something to tease for you here. I got some trivia. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and I never know where this is going to go, but I'm always ready to find out. So what you got for me, dear signal caller?
When you take in practice, it's different than consuming practice virtually. And there are certain things that stand out to you. And once again, the overriding theme was, as I texted you guys in the group, because I knew Owen would get a kick out of it, Rich was in mid-season form. Like, he was even giving the officials the business for not calling enough flags, right?
Love it.
And that's the whole point. If you're going to bring officials in, they should be calling the things that they might get. Yes, of course you're ticky-tack enough in the Big 12 to call it, but the more you see this team up close, you're impressed with the physicality of what you see, the skill set of what you see, in so many different ways. It's a fundamentally different looking team than it was a year ago. But here's what I'm going to ask you, Wes. There are a couple guys, at least, there's more than a couple, but a couple that I want to discuss right now, one on each side of the ball, that I haven't heard much chatter about from anywhere. We have mentioned them in passing, just because we've mentioned about every newcomer in passing at some point or the other. But I think there are two guys in particular people should be talking far more about. And you really haven't. I haven't heard anybody talking about them. I'm sure the staff internally certainly is, no doubt about it. But there's one on each side of the ball. And it's tough to guess. It really is. But
all right. So if you make me guess
people we've extensively discussed. Okay.
Yeah, that's the kicker, is because we have is it an offensive lineman on the offensive side of the ball?
Hence, you'll narrow it down and nail it. Now, I will say this before we go any further. We've talked about the receivers at length, and we've mentioned, not even just mentioned, but discussed John Nider. I continue to be more pleased with what I see out of him.
Okay.
John Nider, I'm expecting production. You look back to what he did at UConn, he was productive at UConn. That's one of the things Rich was looking at. He's like, look, I'll take G5 guys, but they need to be productive G5 guys. This was a kid who had 6 contested catches as their number 3 receiver. He has size. He has some ball skills. He has some hands on him. I think he's a solid route runner who only get better as he gets more coaching. But that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, I'll even give you the position so we can roll it out.
Offensive line?
It is offensive line.
Wes King, my favorite name on the roster.
You nailed it.
Did I?
Wes King is a guy that I don't think's getting enough love. I really don't. You see some good things out of Wes King, so you're 1 for 1. Great job. And remember, Wes King's a guy, he brings versatility on the interior of the offensive line. You know, he was for the most part, a guard at Wyoming. And he played a lot of football at Wyoming, spent 3 years there. But he's not limited to just guard. Can also play some center. He offers a lot to that group and that mix. As you know, Rick Trickett is all about leading them to a mastery of technique. He likes the Swiss Army knife approach to his personnel on the offensive line. And on the interior of the line, a guy like Wes King, who's 6'5", 300 plus pounds. He's a redshirt senior. He arrives in Morgantown with over 1,700 snaps under his belt, 1,750 career snaps. I mean, he's a heady contributor to that number that we keep going back to that makes West Virginia. We have over 7,000 career offensive snaps on the offensive line, putting us among the top 10 in the nation for most career snaps by offensive lines in college football. And when you look at what he did at Wyoming, he was impressive. He played extensively, and he was productive, and he was solid. In 3 years, he had 910 passing downs as a blocker, didn't allow a single sack in 3 years, 900 plus passing downs. West last year, he had 651 snaps at Wyoming, and he had one holding call. So you're talking about a guy, and when you don't get a bunch of holding calls, that speaks to foot placement. Because typically, if you see somebody with a bunch of holding calls, often that's because their feet are out of place. They don't demonstrate great technique. So you're talking about a guy who's a solid technician already. Now you're handing him that's the lump of clay, so to speak, that you're handing Rick Trickett to mold.
Sure.
That's a pretty good piece of clay already.
Heck yeah.
If you only have one holding call and 650 plus snaps last year, well, I think he's going to have a lot to offer on the interior of that offensive line for West Virginia. So great job on your part. You're 1 for 1. We should have teased this throughout the shows. What we should have done, the more I think about it. Now, on the defensive side, there's one guy on the defensive side that I think kind of fills a similar role. Here's a little hint for you.
Okay.
Instead of a position, I'll give you a little nugget. Probably, overall, the fastest guy on the football team.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes me think it has to be a defensive back, right?
It's not a nose guard. Good call.
It's not a nose guard.
If it is, we got some breaking news.
If our fastest guy on the team is weighing 3 bills, we might be in trouble. Either that, or he's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft pretty soon.
One way or the other. That's right. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm blanking. I'm not sure.
A couple years ago, he ran a 10.4 100 meters.
Oh crap! I remember you telling me about
two previous schools before he transferred in. I'll give you another hint.
This is going to be one of those.
One of his previous schools. I don't know. I haven't heard much chatter or discussion outside the building from, I mean, what do I consume, right? Other than the conversations we have. But again, I've heard coaches talking about him, but it's a name that you don't often hear mentioned. And here's another little factoid for you, another little hint. Played in a national championship game.
Played in a national championship game. Okay, now that doesn't necessarily mean this past national championship game. That could be a little bit of a trick there from Jed.
No, it doesn't.
So I'm trying to think. Last year was Indiana and Miami. Year before that
Trickier
was
than you think.
Year before that was Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Less. Trickier than you think.
The year before that was Michigan and
trickier than
Washington.
You think.
Oh, good Lord. The year before that was
No. Let me steer you in the right direction.
Okay.
There are multiple levels of national championships.
Oh.
Okay, here's who it is. I spent a couple years at Montana State, including 2024, and helping Montana State to a 15-0 record before they lost a heartbreaker to North Dakota State in the national championship game. So they were 15-1. He then transferred to UNLV, where he started every game last year, ended up with 63 tackles, but also Here's what's interesting about this guy. Corner at UNLV and spent 89% of his snaps at true corner, not a nickel corner, at wide corner on the perimeter.
Boundary boy.
Meanwhile, Andrew Powdrell,
Okay.
5'10" if he's lucky. I'm not sure he's 5'10", buck 85, buck 80 to 85. Dude can flat out fly, as they say, runs like a scalded dog. He's getting reps at that nickel Sam spot where Jameer Latimer's a Swiss Army knife. He's repping there, but he can play elsewhere too. These guys are both versatile enough that you can move them around. Don't be surprised if, I don't know, one of those guys isn't moved around somewhere because they're both playmaking defensive backs that can just get it done in different ways. If he doesn't start, he's going to play a lot anyway. Of course, a lot of these guys are going to play. Like Rich said I thought he put it great the other day in his presser when he said, he tells the team, don't worry about if you're starting. Worry about if you're good enough to help us win. If you're good enough to help us win, you're going to play. I'll play 3 at every position if they're good enough to help us win. And Wes, when you look at the rotation being used throughout the course of practice, that's the other thing that you can kind of take in real time as opposed to virtually when you're watching it through a virtual lens. The rotations, it's mixes of ones and twos and ones. And there's a lot of guys playing toward the top of these rotations, the way they cycle them in and cycle them out on both sides of the football. So there's a lot of very healthy competition. And I just think that Andrew Powdrell is a guy that I haven't heard much about. Have you? From a media standpoint, I don't think that I have. And again, we've mentioned him, but we sure haven't dwelled and spent much time talking about him. But if you look back to his track pedigree, I think this was when he was at Montana State. He ran the 10-4, but yeah, the dude can run. He can scoot. I mean, you'll see him force turnovers. He finds himself around the football, but yeah, you have a lot of guys in here, Wes. This is going to be a fun off season because the more you dig deep into this roster, there's narratives and there's stories about a lot of guys that maybe haven't been discussed as much as they should be at multiple positions. I mean, we could spend an episode on Jameer Latimer. We really could. I mean, I'm so excited about that guy.
Yeah.
Both Latimers, of course, but Jameer is just an advanced football player that brings so much. You know, it's 1,300 plus career snaps. I mean, he comes in long in the tooth. Yes, he's played for Zach Alley, but he also spent that season in the Big Ten at Wisconsin. Yeah, there's some fun combinations when you look across the secondary, the different corner combinations we can use, the different safety combinations we can use, and then some of these guys playing this nickel Sam hybrid. There's position battles at a lot of key spots, and that's very healthy. That's very healthy. Whereas last year we were kind of hoping by default to find a starting 11 on both sides and then populate your special teams units and go from there and hope you stay healthy. And none of those things happen. None of those things happen.
No, they certainly, unfortunately, did not.
Yeah, you find yourself in a different place. I did Sikkim 365, the ESPN show. It's not ESPN. I don't remember what it is down there. David Smoke and that crew do down in Waco.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big show down in Texas. I did that this week, and they wanted to talk WVU spring ball, and I was trying to explain to them just how very different we are, and it stands to reason. I mean, when you're throwing your roster together, as we've touched on before, I like to say that last year it was Rich and Dusty and a jar of peanut butter in the facilities building, making phone calls to try and, the roster was kind of thrown together like a ransom note, right? And then you had to assemble your staff on the fly and then make a second run at it and back the way those portal windows worked. The May window wasn't the optimal window. The December window kind of was, and we missed out so much on that. Some of the guys hit, some of the guys didn't. Whereas now, you've got a running start. We're ranked in the top 20 in our portal class, ranked in the top 20 in our recruiting class. That's on paper. For what that's worth, that's a good starting point. And it's just like I told those guys on 365. For a program that wants to make its mantra earned success, none of those rankings matter until you roll a football out and do something productive between the lines in the fall. But just looking at where we're at, and that's why I think it's fun, this whole process of having a draft and splitting the team up. And I talked to Rich yesterday. We didn't talk about this, but the draft or anything. But I've heard him say in passing that he doesn't think he did this before or couldn't remember if he had. Well, Wes, I can tell you, we had done it before. I remember it was, and I don't know how many times he's done it since then, but at least one year at Glenville in '92, going into my junior year at Glenville, we did the same thing. He split the teams up. He had a draft. He had two staff members coaching each team. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason I remember this. The reason I remember this is our linebacker coach was one of the head coaches, our position coach that coached our backers. And I'm trying to remember who the other coach was. Well, guess what our linebacker coach did? Guess who his first three picks were? Our starting backers.
The fastest guys
Guess
on the team.
Who the other coach? Guess who the other coach picked? Me, Chris George, and either our center Matt Lewinsky or Shane Haddix are running back, one or the other, right?
Yeah.
So we won like 34-17.
Sure.
Right? But I was looking at it like, hey, the more I think about it, maybe he was playing the long game and he was showing his backers that, hey, I'm here for you.
Sure.
Even if it costs me the spring game, I'm still going to pick you first,
Of course.
So that's what I remember about that. But it was a fun process, and it did foster some competitive spirits. It really did. So that's what I like about it. And I know it'll have that same effect in this setting. So dividing it up, having a draft, going through it position by position, and drafting like that, and then having those two teams go at each other with something on the line, even if it's pride, but there'll be something more. Something will be at stake. So I think that you're going to learn a lot about it. And part of it is the coaches want to know. We want to know in a competitive environment, all right, who's going to step up, who's going to kind of, be a shrinking violet when the light starts to shine, and who's going to step up when the light starts to shine, and there's some true competition. And so that's what will put you in position to formulate some loose version of a depth chart post-spring, which Rich has talked about. Now, it's easy to say that now that you don't have that portal window in May. You'd be crazy to have any kind of depth chart come out after your spring game the way it was before. But now, what are you going to do? You transferring? Not unless somebody's tampering, right?
That's right.
But I'm really eager to see how this works out. I think it's going to be two solid and salty football teams going at it with some cool things on the line. And I think that it'll show the fans a lot. And in whatever competitive environment plays out, I mean, you don't want to get crazy and risk injury beyond a certain point, but you also want to have enough competitive football that you can do some evaluations. And that's kind of where we're at with it. Yeah, we're in a much different place as you would expect right now, as opposed to approaching the middle of April last year when we were about to make a major push in the portal for the May window. And we're just in a much different spot. I mean, you can tell it's more productive. There's more efficiency. I mean, it's rough around the edges, no doubt about it. Spring ball should be.
Of course.
You're still seeing some mistakes and some MAs and some gaffes, but we're in a much better spot. You would expect us to be, and I think we are, maybe even a hair better than what you would hope for under the circumstances. But there's a lot of times between now and us actually teeing it up for something that matters against Coastal Carolina, and we're going to need all that time. We'll get in next week when we talk about the spring game, some of the things we want to look at, some of the things we want to see that are most critical in our eye, in our opinion, in our estimation, to what would make us feel better going into the summer, into the modern version of OTAs, right? But yeah, I just thought that was kind of fun to discuss a couple names that maybe we haven't discussed enough.
I found the numbers for you to round this conversation out. So Andrew Powdrow ran track 2 years at Montana State, freshman and sophomore year. His sophomore season was his best in terms of his numbers and his results. He ran a 10-4 100-meter dash, Jed, and a 21-9, so a sub-22 second 200-meter dash, both in the 2024 track season. So 10-4 100-meter speed, 21-9 200-meter speed. Hey, that's not quite Usain Bolt, but that'll do. That'll do.
Getting after it. That's getting after it. And, I got a young one now, a 12-year-old that just started track. And he's running the 100, the 200, the 400, just started the long jump. Loves every second of it. I was kind of forced into running some track by my football coach. I mean, I never went to a track practice, but I ran track for 4 years. He would show up. I always tell these stories. He would show up. Coach Haddix would tell you after first period in the morning, Drenning, call your parents. You're running the 4x4 in Romney tonight. You won't be home till 11. What? Okay. Next thing you know, you're on the bus with the track team. You're going to the other side of the state. You're
Yep.
sitting in the stands and flirting with the girls for 5 hours. Then you're
That's
running
right.
the portal.
Then you go run. Then you go run for a few seconds and get out of here.
That's it. And now I'm watching my kid do that. So, but 21.9, 200, that's getting after it, brother. That's getting after it.
It's a little bit faster than I could run, just a little bit.
Stay tuned. Number 14.
That's awesome.
In your
I
program,
liked
number one in your heart, Andrew.
I liked the way you kind of framed the spring ball conversation there. That was a lot of fun. And yes, next week we'll talk some more spring game. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to go, Jed, as well, so we can have some fun conversation around that and what we're looking for and all that good stuff as we head down the home stretch of the spring practice season. But that will do it for us today. Thanks to our co-host, Mr. Producer, Mr. Do-It-All himself, Skylar Callahan. Of course, as always, for the barbecuing, sharp-dressed, beer-trucking Big O, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Euler. The one thing we ask of you is to be in here and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over.
It's over.